The year is 1786, and on the Great West Road out of London, somewhere past the 50th milestone, it has been raining since the middle of the afternoon, a steady, unhurried, well-mannered English rain, the kind that settles in like a guest who knows he is welcome. Through it, in the last grey light of the evening, a stagecoach is swaying up the road behind 4 steaming horses, lamps already lit, its roof passengers huddled under dripping tarpaulins, and its inside passengers dozing against the leather, and every soul aboard, coachman, guard, passengers, and very possibly the horses, is thinking about exactly one thing: the inn. Somewhere ahead, around one more long bend, there is a broad stone house with a sign swinging over the road and an arched entrance into a lantern-lit yard. There are stables and hot water and cold beef and warm beds. There is a fire in the taproom that has not gone out, the landlord will tell you, in 40 years. The coach will turn in under the arch with a boom of hooves on cobbles, and the rain will stop drumming on the roof because the roof of the gateway is over it, and someone will open the door with a lamp in hand and say the oldest and most beautiful sentence in the language of travel: "You're in good time, sir. Supper is just going up." This is history for sleep. Tonight we are going to spend one whole night, the entire night, from this wet dusk to tomorrow's washed and shining dawn, at a coaching inn in the golden age of the English road. We will see the evening coaches in and the horses stabled. We will sit in the taproom while the rain streams down the windows. We will follow the chambermaid's warming pan up the crooked stairs and watch the innkeeper walk his last round with his candle lamp, locking the great doors, banking the fires, listening to his whole sleeping house. And in the deep middle of the night, when every guest is far away in their first sleep, we will be awake in the yard for the small thunder of the night mail, the fastest thing in England, changing horses in the rain by lantern light in under 5 minutes, while upstairs nobody even turns over. Nothing frightening happens tonight. The inn has stood here 200 years and means to stand 200 more. And if stories like this help you drift off, subscribing helps me make more of them. Now the rain is falling, the light is going, and down the road, faint but growing, comes the sound this house is built around: hoofbeats and the long bright note of a coach horn. Let us go in under the arch, out of the wet, and meet the house awake before we have the pleasure of watching it fall asleep. Stand under the gateway arch a moment, out of the rain, and take the measure of the place. Because an inn like this is not a building so much as a small working kingdom, and it is easiest to understand at the hour when all its lamps are coming on. The house itself fronts the road, 3 stories of weathered brick and stone, a long ridge of mossy tile, a rank of mullioned windows already glowing butter yellow through the rain, and over the road, on a wrought iron bracket as big as a gallows, the painted sign a white hart, or a red lion, or a swan with 2 necks. Every inn on the road has its beast creaking gently on its hinges with each push of the wet wind. Under the sign, the arch, a tunnel of stone tall enough for a loaded coach, wide enough for 6 horses led abreast, driven clean through the middle of the house the way a river is allowed through a town, because the whole living of the place flows in and out through that opening. And through the arch, the yard, the true heart of the inn, a long cobbled court open to the sky, galleried on 2 sides, so that the bedroom doors of the first floor open onto a covered wooden balcony that looks down on the comings and goings below, with the stables and coach houses ranged down the far side, a great water trough by the pump, and lanterns, horn and glass hung at every post and doorway, so that even now, with the daylight nearly gone and the rain slanting silver through the lamplight, the yard is as legible as a lit stage. And it needs to be, because the yard is never still for long. This is a posting and coaching house on one of the great turnpike roads of England, the smooth, tolled gravel and stone highways that have, within living memory, worked a quiet revolution in the land. The innkeeper's father used to tell of roads so foul that coaches sank to the axle, and gentlemen rode post rather than risk them, of journeys to London that took a wallowing week. Now the road runs hard and cambered between its milestones, mended by the truss that takes the tolls, and the stages come through on a timetable, up coaches and down coaches, morning and evening, day after day, London behind them one way and the West Country ahead the other, each pair of horses running its 8 or 10 miles at a brisk trot and no further. That is the arithmetic the whole road is built on. A coach is only as fast as its next change of horses, and so every 8 or 10 miles, all the way from London to Bath and Bristol and beyond, stands a house like this one, stables full of fresh horses, ostlers waiting in the yard, the way beacons once stood along a coast. An inn is not merely where travellers sleep. It is a link in the living chain that moves everything the kingdom needs to move. Its people, its letters, its news, its money, its runaway lovers and its returning sailors, 8 miles at a time, at 8 miles an hour. The man whose kingdom this is stands just inside the arch now, where he likes to stand at coach time, and we may as well meet him, because we will be following his candle before the night is done. Call him Mr. Hartwell. Landlords here are called by their inn as often as their name, and to half the road he is simply the White Hart. He is 50 or thereabouts, broad, aproned, quick-eyed and unhurried, a man who has spent his whole life within sound of this arch, potboy in it, ostler's lad in it, married the cook's daughter across that very yard, and rose the way innkeepers rise, by knowing where everything is and what everything costs, and exactly how long a gentleman may be kept waiting for his supper before goodwill curdles, which is not long, and which is why, behind him, the whole house is already moving. Through the taproom window you can see the fire built up and the candles lit. Through the kitchen casement comes the shine of copper and the first savoury breath of the evening's roast. Overhead, along the gallery, a chambermaid hurries with an armful of linen, and from the stables comes the rattle of harness being readied. The coach on the road is still half a mile off. The inn can hear it anyway. 200 years of practice have given the house something like ears of its own. He hears it too, the horn again, nearer now. 4 notes flung cheerfully through the rain, and he does not move, because it is not time to move yet, and a landlord who fusses teaches his house to fuss. He only settles his apron, glances once around his lit and breathing yard, the way a captain glances at his rigging, and says, to nobody in particular, in the voice of a man confirming that the world is where he left it, "That'll be the Bath coach," punctual for once. And under the arch, with the rain sheeting off the lip of the stone and the lamplight shivering in every puddle, the yard turns toward the road to receive the evening. While the coach is still half a mile out, spare a minute for the sign over the road, because everything this house is hangs from that bracket. The White Hart has swung there, repainted a dozen times over 200 years, since the days when this road was a pack trail and the inn a hall with a brewhouse. Everyone on the road steers by the beasts. A man who cannot read, and many an honest carter cannot, knows the hart from the lion, from the swan, as surely as a sailor knows lighthouses, and directions in this England run from sign to sign, past the bell, sharp at the Green Man, and put up at the Hart. The signs are the road's constellation, and the inns its fixed stars, older than the turnpike trust, older than the mail, some of them older than the churches they stand beside. This one has fed king's men and parliament men in the same week, asking neither their politics nor their names, only their custom. It has been rebuilt after 1 fire and 1 bankruptcy. It has buried 11 landlords, and its cellar book remembers all of them better than the parish register does. For an inn is a strange and durable institution if you stop under its dripping sign and think, a private house that belongs to everybody, a home whose whole art is to be home for strangers, one night at a time. The law itself takes it seriously. An innkeeper, unlike any shopkeeper, may not lightly turn away a traveller with the means to pay. The road's shelter is close to a common right, and has been since before anyone can say, and so the house has soaked up 200 years of arrivals, the way its beams have soaked up smoke, the plague years when it barred its arch and passed bread out on a shovel, the coronation nights when the yard danced, the young men who scratched their sweethearts' names on the taproom glass with diamond rings on the way to London and came back old or rich or never while the names stayed. The gallery boards are worn hollow outside the best chambers, exactly the way the doorsteps of a certain village were worn, and by the same instrument, repetition, gentle and total, the same human errand performed nightly until oak gives way before it. Sleep, kept faithfully enough, carves wood. Mr. Hartwell owns the license. Nobody exactly owns the White Hart. He would tell you so himself on a winter night in the small hours of honesty. A landlord is a trustee. The house was minding the road long before him, and means to be minding it long after, and his 30 years are one watch of a very long night indeed. It is the same shape we have met before on these travels of ours. The lighthouse keeps its keepers, the ship outlives her captains, the village wears out its watchman and is still there, and it is, perhaps, the secret of why old inns feel the way they feel, to walk into out of the rain. All those kept nights have settled into the walls, the way warmth settles into hearthstone, and a traveller at the door borrows, for one night's silver, the accumulated safety of 2 centuries. That is what the sign is really advertising, creaking on its iron in the wet wind. Not beds. Continuity. It arrives the way coaches always arrive, which is to say all at once. One moment the yard is lamplight and rain and readiness. The next, the arch is full of noise, hooves striking sparks even on wet cobbles, the boom of wheels under the stone vault, the coachman's long "Woe then," delivered in the tone of a man soothing 4 old friends, and the Bath stage stands steaming in the middle of the yard, rain smoking off the horses' backs, lamps guttering, roof passengers already climbing stiffly down the wheel, like sailors coming down rigging, and the whole staff of the inn converging upon it with the calm speed of a crew who have done this 6 times a day for their entire lives. Watch the ostlers first, because theirs is the prettiest work in the yard. Ostler, O-S-S-ler, is the old word for a horseman of an inn, and the head ostler here is a small bow-legged man of 60 who is said to be able to tell a horse's ailments by the sound of its trot on the cobbles. He and his lads are at the team's heads before the coach has fully stopped. Buckles are flying, traces dropping, and the 4 spent horses, dark with rain and sweat together, their breath-making clouds in the lamplight, are walked out of the shafts and away toward their warm stalls, rugs over their backs, each one patted and spoken to by name, for a good yard knows its horses better than it knows most of its guests. And from the far stable door, already led out and waiting, come tomorrow morning's team, no, tonight's next team, fresh and dry and stamping, to be backed into the shafts and buckled home. If the coach were going through, the whole change would take shorter than the telling of it. But the Bath stage sleeps here tonight. This inn is its night stage, its passengers bespoke for supper and beds, and so instead the coach itself is wheeled away under the coach house roof to drip in peace, and the yard's attention turns to the more delicate cargo, the passengers. They come in under the gallery in the usual assortment. A wool merchant of Bristol, round and genial, who has made this run 40 times and heads for the taproom fire like a homing pigeon. A young naval officer with his sea chest, going home to his mother after 3 years on a foreign station, so brown and altered that he has been rehearsing in the coach how not to make her cry. A parson and his wife, arguing gently about whether the trunk was properly corded. A governess, very upright, very tired, travelling alone on the inside seat her employers paid for, glad beyond words that this inn is known to be respectable. 2 roof passengers, soaked in spite of everything, who will dry by the kitchen fire and sleep plainly and cheaply and be up first in the morning. Mr. Hartwell receives them all in the doorway with the lamp held high, not bowing exactly, for a landlord on the great road bows to no one, but inclining wholesale and retail, and sorting them as he does it with the speed of long custom. The parson and his lady to the best chamber over the arch, the officer next the merchant, the governess to the small quiet room at the stairhead where a lone lady is put where the chambermaid can keep an eye on her comfort. Supper for all in half an hour, and hot water, John, hot water everywhere before anything else in this world. And then the luggage and the small ceremonies. The Boots, that is his whole name in this house, a knowing, cheerful boy of 15, whose office is boots, baggage, errands and omniscience, swarms up the coach's rear ladder and hands down trunks and valises into the arms of the porter, calling their owners like a little auctioneer. The guard of the coach, a stately personage in a caped greatcoat, hands the waybill to the landlord, and the 2 men confer a moment under the arch, in the manner of sovereigns exchanging dispatches. Who is bespoke for supper? Who goes on by the morning coach? What the road was like through the water splash at Hungerford Hub Deep, sir, and rising. The coachman himself, having seen his horses go, in a coachman worth his salt, sees his horses stabled, before he thinks of his own supper, comes rolling across the yard at last, shedding rain like a church roof, and is received in the taproom as visiting royalty. For on the road in this age, the coachman is a very great man indeed, and boys along the whole route practice holding their hands the way he holds his reins. Within a quarter of an hour it is done. The yard empties as smoothly as it filled. Horses stabled, coach housed, passengers distributed, luggage aloft, and the rain, which never stopped for any of it, has the cobbles to itself again, hissing softly on the lantern glass, running in bright threads between the stones toward the drain by the pump. The inn has swallowed the evening whole, and from the outside now it looks the way it will look all night. Lit windows, smoking chimneys, the signs swinging, the arch a warm mouth of lamplight in the long wet dark of the road. One more coach is due tonight. The up mail passes through in the small hours, but that is a matter for the yard alone. For everyone else, the evening of the house has begun, and evening at a great inn is a performance with 3 stages, played in 3 rooms, the kitchen, the parlour and the taproom, and we shall attend all 3 in order of the smell. While the passengers are shedding their wet coats indoors, step across the yard behind the ostler's lads into the small lit room beside the stables that travellers never see, and the whole road runs on, the harness room. It is warm. The one stove permitted on this side of the yard lives here, banked low behind iron, for damp is the death of leather, and it smells like nothing else on earth. Neat's foot oil and saddle soap, wet wool steaming, beeswax, hay, and the deep brown smell of 100 years of harness, which is the smell of the coaching age itself, if the age had to choose one. Around the walls, on oak pegs worn to gloss, hangs the yard's real wealth after its horses, collars ranked by name. Every horse's collar is his own, shaped to his shoulders by Miles, and lending it is as unthinkable as lending boots, bridles, traces, pole chains, cruppers, the spare sets, and the male's priority set on its own sacred row. And on the bench under the lamp, the night's work, the bath stage's harness, come in soaked, to be wiped, oiled and hung before the lads sleep, because leather put away wet tonight is leather cracked next month, and a trace snapped on a downgrade next year, and the yard's whole creed hangs on that chain of consequence. The head ostler works the oil in with his thumbs, unhurried by lamplight, the way his father taught him in this room. The youngest lad wipes buckles and fights sleep. The stove ticks, the rain fingers the little window, and the talk, when there is talk, is horses always, and only horses. their feet, their moods, their appetites, delivered in the low economical shorthand of men to whom horses are colleagues. There is a whole quiet craft world here, and the coaching inn keeps a guild of it. The farrier who comes up from the forge across the way, the smith's other trade, to shoe the yards 60 feet a month and read their soundness like a physician. The collar maker in the town, the wheelwright at the corner, the saddler whose bill is the ledger's steadiest line. Speed is what the road sells, but speed is made here, in oiled leather and true iron and shoulders that fit. Every gallop the mail makes tonight was manufactured in rooms like this one, thumbstroke by thumbstroke, long before the horn sounded. The last strap goes up on its peg, supple and dark. The lamp is trimmed for the night watch, and the lads go to their supper in the kitchen at last, smelling of oil and honest work, leaving the harness room to its stove-warm dark, the little chapel of the yard vested and ready, where tomorrow's speed hangs sleeping on the walls. The kitchen first, because everything in the house tonight radiates from it the way the yard radiates from the arch. It is a long, low, tremendous room at the back of the house, and at this hour it is at the top of its powers. 2 fires going, the great one under the roasting jack, where a sirloin the size of a footstool has been turning since 5 o'clock, dripping and hissing into the pan below, and the small one under the boiler and the stew pans, the dresser blazing with pewter and copper, hams and flitches and bunches of dried herbs hanging from the smoke-dark beams, and in the middle of it all, commanding, Mrs. Hartwell, the landlady, the cook's daughter who married the potboy 40 years ago, and who now runs the interior kingdom of this house as absolutely as her husband runs the yard. She has a kitchen maid at the pastry, a scullery girl at the sink, the boots darting in and out on errands, and a tongue that can keep all 3 in orbit without her ever raising her voice or taking her eye off the gravy. The travellers upstairs think of the inn as the landlord's. The landlord knows better. His name is on the licence. The inn's reputation comes out of this room, and reputation on the road is supper. The coaching inns of England live and die by their tables, and travellers carry the news of them from stage to stage, the way they carry the news of the war, the White Hart's sirloin, the George's trout, the Pelican's pastry, the certain inn on the Great North Road that no one names without mentioning the goose. Tonight's supper is the standard glory of a good house on a wet night. The sirloin, brown and running with juice, a boiled fowl or 2 with parsley sauce, a raised pie glazed like furniture, potatoes and cabbage from the inn's own garden, whose rows you could see from the gallery if it were not raining, bread from the inn's own oven, strong yellow cheese, and a damson tart with cream from the inn's own cow. Nothing on the table has travelled farther than the fish. That is the deep secret of the coaching inn, and the thing the travellers half sense and love without naming. It is not a shop. It is a farmhouse grown great brewhouse, bakehouse, dairy, garden, stables, piggery, a self-provisioned little world that could stand a siege, feeding the road from its own ground. At the stroke of the half-hour, the dishes go up the passage in procession, Mrs. Hartwell at the rear, like a drover to the parlour, where the cloth is laid for what the road calls the ordinary, the common table where coach passengers sup together, gentry and merchants and governesses side by side, at a fixed price and a fixed hour, with the landlord himself carving at the sideboard. It is one of the small equalities of the travelling age, the ordinary. People who would never meet in their hometowns are set elbow to elbow by the accident of the waybill, and the rain on the windows, and the candles on the cloth, and the sirloin doing its generous work produce, most nights, a warmth that surprises everyone. Tonight is no exception. The merchant carves his neighbour's portions and tells the story of the highwayman he almost saw in '79 almost. for the fellow proved to be a hawthorn bush. But it is a good story, and the governess laughs, and being laughed with does her more good than the fowl. The parson says a grace that is short and means it. The naval officer, asked politely about the sea, is shy for 2 sentences, and then talks like a river let out of a lock, and the whole table sails with him to islands none of them will ever see, while the candles burn down and the rain keeps its steady, kindly drumming, and Mr. Hartwell moves behind the chairs with the decanter, filling, measuring the room, saying little. A landlord hears everything twice, once as talk, once as custom. The officer's mother lives 10 miles on. He shall have the gig at 8 and arrive before his letter does. The governess goes to the Marlborough coach at 7. The boots shall call her at 6 with chocolate, and her fare is to be quietly looked at. Her purse, he judges, is thinner than her gloves. None of this is said. All of it is decided between the sirloin and the tart, in the space behind his eyes. By 9 the cloth is drawn. The parson and his lady have gone up, candle in hand, and the parlour empties by degrees toward the 2 destinations of every evening: bed for the tired, and for everyone else the taproom, while the ordinary is still at the tart, climb the crooked stair behind the chambermaid, because the upper house has its own evening liturgy, and she is its priestess. Her name is Hannah. She has been at the Hart 9 years, knows every board that speaks and every latch's temper, and carries just now the 2 instruments of her office, the candle and the warming pan, the long-handled brass vessel, filled at the kitchen fire with clear embers, that is to the coaching age what the covered fire was to the village, comfort carried. Room by room she goes down the gallery side, turning down beds, drawing curtains against the rain, and sweeping the hissing pan between the sheets in long, slow strokes, a stroke for the feet, a stroke for the middle, and always, in the best chamber, an extra pass for the parson's lady, because Hannah sizes guests at a glance, and coverlet strategists sleep cold. Behind her the rooms are left breathing warmth in the dark, 9 small climates of comfort ripening under the rain noise, waiting. See one of them properly by her candle, before she shuts the door on it. The best chamber, over the arch. A 4-post bed with its curtains drawn at night, not for show but for warmth. A room within the room, a tent of wool in the cold sea of the chamber. The feather mattress shaken to a hill, linen turned crisp over the blanket's edge. A washstand with its basin and ewer, the ewer to be filled steaming at 6. A small looking-glass, a chest, a chair for the clothes, a candlestick with its snuffer on the night table, and by the candlestick the inn's one printed grace, a card of the coach times, up and down, mail and stages, which is to this age what the tide table is to a port. The window gives on the road, the rain writes on it steadily, and under the window, faint gold on the wet stones, lies the light of the arch lantern below, so that a guest waking in the night in this room looks out, sees the kept light burning, and knows without a word everything the house wishes them to know. Hannah's evening ends where the guests begins. Pans emptied and hung, candle ends gathered, an inn's economy is candle ends. Hers to keep by ancient perquisite, and she reads by them a last jug of small beer to the coachman's room over the stables, received with a nod worth wages, and then up her own ladder stair to the attic she shares with the kitchen maid under the rain-drummed roof, where she says her prayers at speed, is asleep before the taproom empties. Servants sleep first and rise first. The house folds up from the top and does not hear the mail come through, has not heard the mail come through in 9 years, though it passes 40 feet from her pillow. The road's noise is sorted by station. The ostler wakes for a cough in the stables and sleeps through the horn. Hannah wakes if a guest's bell so much as clears its throat, and the whole Royal Mail is her lullaby. Every soul in this house has ears tuned to their own watch and deaf to all others, and that as much as the bolts and the lantern is how an inn full of strangers sleeps like one household. The night is divided into keepings, and everyone keeps theirs. The taproom is the inn's other heart, the yard's heart is work, and this one is ease, and on a wet night in 1786 it is very likely the warmest, brightest, most companionable room within 10 miles. It is low and wide, with a floor of worn flags and a ceiling of beams that tall men have learned about the hard way. A settle, a high-backed wooden bench, polished by a century of shoulders on either side of a fireplace you could stand up in. And the fire itself, the famous one, the fire that has not gone out in 40 years, banked at night and blown alive each morning, like the hearths of the medieval village its ancestors were. Around it, in the ancient arrangement, sit the two nations of the taproom, the travellers who change nightly, and the locals who never change at all. The carrier who works the road with his slow wagon, the blacksmith from the forge across the way, whose fire and the inn's are old rivals, the sexton, a shepherd in from the downs, dog flat under the settle with one eye open, the head ostler, off duty now, in his corner seat by unwritten freehold. They have sat here through better landlords and worse kings, and the room belongs to them the way the church belongs to the graveyard. Tonight the wool merchant holds the floor and the coachman holds the fireside chair, and between them the evening does what English inn evenings have always done. It turns the day into stories. The road through the watersplash, the famous frost of '84, when the coaches crossed the flooded meadows on the ice. Whether the new mail coaches, the marvel of the age, 2 years old this summer, that carry the letters behind galloping teams with an armed guard and stop for no man whether they will last. The coachman doubting it professionally, on the grounds that no timetable ever survived an English winter, and every man present nodding into his ale, with the deep satisfaction of hearing the future doubted by an expert. The talk is slow, well-worn, comfortable as the settle. Long silences fall and are not minded. The rain fills them, and the fire fills them, and the dog under the bench sighs like a small bellows. Someone at the dark end of the room is singing, very low, not to be listened to, but only to keep the evening company, an old song about a girl left behind that everyone knows and no one joins because it is being sung exactly right. Mrs. Hartwell's ale is the third pillar of the house's fame, brewed in the yard brewhouse, cool from the cellar Mr. Hartwell's grandfather dug, and it is drunk here in the old measures by men who will walk home by known paths in the dark, or sleep in the hayloft by ancient arrangement. But a good taproom governs itself like a good parish. The landlord draws the ale and keeps the peace mostly by the way he says good evening, and closing time is not an hour on any clock, but a slow ebbing felt by everyone at once, the way the sea is felt to turn. The shepherd goes first, dog at heel, 3 miles of wet dark ahead of him, and not a thought about it. Then the smith, pausing at the door to judge the rain with a craftsman's eye set in for the night. He rules, good for the barley, and out into it. The carrier climbs to his loft. The coachman, last as befits his rank, banks his final pipe, delivers his benediction, early start, gentlemen, and goes up the back stair to the room over the stables that is his whenever he sleeps on this stage, where the smell of his own horses comes up through the floor, and is, though he would never say such a thing aloud, the only air he sleeps well in. And then it is 11 o'clock or thereabouts, and the taproom is empty for the first time since morning. Fire settling, candles guttered, rain on the dark windows, the cat taking possession of the warm flags before the hearth with the air of a landlord's landlord. In the doorway, Mr. Hartwell stands a moment, looking at the room the way he looked at the yard at coach time, counting without counting, feeling the house through the floorboards. Upstairs, 9 travellers and his own household. In the lofts, 3 more. In the stables, 26 horses. Banked in the kitchen and here 2 fires. Abroad in the night, 1 more coach, due through at 2. He takes the candle lamp from its shelf, A stout brass lamp with a horn pane, his father's before him, lights it at the taproom embers and begins the small journey he has made every night for 30 years, and his father made for 40 years before that, the last round of the house. And this, of all the hours of the inn's long day, is the hour that belongs entirely to him, and the hour this whole night has been walking toward. Let us go with him. Between the taproom's ebb and the last round, there is a small lit island in the dark of the house, and it is worth pausing at. The bar not a counter for drinking at in this age, but the landlord's little glazed office off the passage, part counting house, part command post, the one room where the inn is run. It is hardly bigger than a coach, a high desk, a stool, the day book and the ledger, the cash box under the desk with its iron corners, pigeonholes for letters left for travellers, for an inn is half a post office by custom, and half a bank and half a registry, which makes it 3 times what it appears. The spare keys on their board, each on its worn peg, a shelf of cordials, and the tariff of the house in fair round hand. Here, nightly, by 2 candles, Mr. Hartwell casts up the day. So many covers at the ordinary, so much ale drawn, hay and corn to the Bath stages account, the chaise hire to the squire's man, post horses out and back. He writes a fair hand, taught by the same schoolmaster whose grandson snored just now against the taproom settle, and he counts the way old landlords count silver stacked by feel, 1 year still on the house, and the sums go into the ledger under 200 years of other sums, in inks gone brown, a history of England kept in suppers. And the ledger tells true what the taproom tells tall. Good years and bad ride the road as plainly as the coaches do. War years thin the traffic and dear years thin the suppers. A new pike road 10 miles south once bled this house pale for a decade, and the ledger shows the wound. The mails coming 2 years ago shows too, a quickening in the lines, more traffic moving and moving faster. A landlord reads the kingdom in his daybook the way the pikeman reads it in his toll board. And what Mr. Hartwell reads there lately, if you must know, is confidence. The road's better every year, the coaches fuller, the changes faster. A man of the road in 1786 stands, though he cannot see its shape, at the bright noon of his trade. That the rails will come, and the great yards fall grass quiet, and the arch lanterns go out one by one up and down the roads of England, that is 60 years off and another story, and no rumour of it will trouble tonight. The candle flame leans as the rain finds the window, the last figures dry, the cash box locks with its small ceremonial click, and the day of the White Hart is formally over, weighed and entered, the moment before its keeper takes up the lamp to walk the night. A word, before the house darkens, about the man now settling to sleep above his horses, because the coachman is the road's crowned head, and no portrait of a coaching knight is honest without him. He is called Old Weller on this road, though he is not yet 50. Coachman age by miles, and he has driven the equal of 8 times round the world on this one stretch of England. His kingdom is the box seat, 4 reins gathered into a left hand as knowing as a fiddler's, the whip in the right, used mostly as a wand of office. A good coachman talks to his teams and saves the silk for ceremony, and under him, at all seasons, in all weathers, 10 tons of coach, luggage, mails and mankind swinging along a crowned road, at speeds the law of the trust and the arithmetic of horseflesh have made into a fine and exact art. He knows this road asleep, which is fortunate, for he has occasionally driven it so the steady horses minding the work while the master nodded, which every coachman denies, and every coachman has done. He knows its every pothole by its first name, every water splashes moods, every hill where passengers walk to spare the team, and every downgrade where the skid shoe goes on. He can tell by the feel of the reins in fog which of his leaders is lying, and by the ring of the road under the wheels when frost is coming before the pikeman's glass knows it. His office has its livery, the many-caped greatcoat that sheds rain like a roof, the low-crowned hat, the nosegay in the buttonhole on May Day and its court, the boys at every change who study his hands, the landlords who keep his chair, the passengers who tip him at the stage's end, as one tips no other servant, because it is not service exactly, it is passage he has carried them through the outside world as a pilot carries ships, and it has its law, told at fires like tonight's, the great snow runs, the teams that bolted and the wrists that held them, the gentlemen amateurs, my lords of the whip club, who pay guineas for a turn on the box and handle the ribbons, Weller allows no worse than a man might expect. And the one story every coachman owns a version of the night something stood in the road and the leaders stopped dead and would not pass, and in the morning there was the washed-out culvert, or the fallen elm, or the flood. Horses see what men are spared, says the road, and God keeps drunkards, sailors and the outside passengers. He sleeps now, in the little room where the warm breath of his own team rises through the floorboards, his watch a great silver turnip, guard's pattern, his one vanity ticking on the chair beside him, wound to the morning stage. 70 years from tonight, old men who rode beside such men as boys will bore their grandchildren magnificently about it the frost mornings, the teams like clockwork, the hedges going by because the coachman's world at this hour of this night, rain on his window and horses under his floor, is at its absolute and unrepeatable noon. And like every noon, it has not the faintest idea of the fact. It only means to be called at 5. He begins as he always begins, with the great front door, the road door, under the sign. It stands open all day like the mouth of the house. Now he swings it to, and the noise of the rain drops half away, and he sets the bar in its brackets and shoots the 2 bolts, top and bottom, each with its own voice, the top one sweet and the bottom one stubborn since before he was born. No traveller will knock now till morning, and if one should, some benighted rider, some chaise broken down in the wet, why, there is the night bell, and he will hear it as his father heard it from the pillow. An inn never wholly closes. It only draws itself in like a fire banked for the night. Then the round proper, candle lamp held high, through the dark house he could walk blind. The parlour, fire low and safe behind its guard, shutters barred, the long table smelling of wax and crumbs and blown candles, the ghost of the ordinary still warm in the room. He straightens a chair. The passage, the tall clock ticking against the wall, older than the house's license, which he winds the 7 turns his father taught him, and no more. The coffee room, the little writing room where the parson sat an hour over his sermon, shutters, latch, all well. And then the cellar stairs down into the cool earth smell, lamp throwing his shadow huge across the barrels, the ale sleeping in its ranks, the cider, the small dark kingdom of bottles, where he tries the outer cellar door that opens to the yard, finds it fast, as it has been fast every night for 30 years, and stands one moment in the good cave silence where no rain reaches, out of pure old habit, because his father used to say, a cellar is the only room in an inn where a man can hear himself think. Up again, and along the stone passage to the kitchen, where the last light of the house besides his own still burns. Mrs. Hartwell has gone up this half hour, but the kitchen keeps a low life all night, the great fire banked under its ash, done by her own hand, the one task in this room she gives to nobody, with tomorrow's stockpot standing at the warm edge of it, muttering to itself once in a while like a sleeper, the bread dough set to rise under cloths on the dresser, filling the dark with its faint, sweet, living smell, the copper gleaming faintly, rank above rank, like armor in a hall. He tries the yard door, looks once at the banked fire, not because it needs looking at, but because looking at banked fires at midnight is what innkeepers are for. Fire is the one enemy this house fears, and every inn on the road can name a house that vanished in a night for want of a look. And he takes an apple from the dresser bowl, because he has taken an apple from that bowl at this hour, since he was the potboy, and some laws are above a landlord. Then the stairs and the sleeping floors. This is the gentlest stretch of the round, and he takes it slow, hand cupped at the lamp, stepping over the fourth stair that cracks like a pistol. Along the corridor, the guests' boots stand outside their doors in a row, the merchant's stout pair, the officer's salt-stained sea boots, the parson's sober blacks, the governess's small worn shoes, each pair to be carried down presently by the boots and returned blacked and shining before their owner's wake, which is the small nightly miracle of English inns and the whole reason that boy has his name. From behind the doors, the sounds of the house asleep, the merchant's snore magnificent, a sound with a reputation on 3 roads, the officer's silent, sailor fashion, dead to the world in the first featherbed in 3 years, a board creaking as the parson's wife turns, rain, everywhere and always, on the roofs and the gallery and the yard, stitching every room to every other. He pauses at the stairhead window and looks down into his lantern-lit yard, rain silvering past the horn panes, cobbles shining, all still, and the look on his face is the look Paya, the watchman, wore on the church porch 500 years before him, and the lighthouse keeper will wear on his gallery a century after, the look of a man in the middle of the night, in the middle of his charge, finding it all exactly as it should be. 1 flight up, under the roof, his own household sleeps. The maid's room, the boots in his cupboard bed at the stairhead, boots themselves his last thought, and his first the kitchen girl, the old dog on the landing who lifts 1 eyebrow at the lamp and lets it pass. And so down again, by the back stair, to the last station of the round, the door to the yard and the light in the arch. The yard lantern, the great one, under the gateway burns all night, every night, rain or frost or fog. It is the inn's evening star, the light the mail looks for, the light a lost traveller on the dark road sees a mile off and steers by, and no economy has ever been permitted to touch it. He checks its oil, trims the wick, latches the horn door of it, and then, though the rain still falls and his own bed is warm and near, he stands a minute in the shelter of the arch, apple in hand, looking down the dark road eastward toward London, toward the sound that will come out of that darkness at 2 o'clock, and listens to his house behind him. Rain, stockpot, clock, snore, the shift of a horse in the stables, the whole great creature breathing slow. 30 years of nights, and the minute under the arch has never once bored him. Then he goes in and up, and the last candle in the white heart but 2, the arch lantern, and the low flame in the stable lamp goes out. The inn is asleep. And now the night itself takes the house the long middle hours, the rain's hours, the horses' hours, and we shall drift through them room by dark room, out to the stables where 1 lamp burns and 1 man wakes, and down the streaming road to meet the thing that is coming, because the deepest truth of a coaching inn is this: it is the house that never entirely sleeps, so that everything else on the road can. Above the landlord's bed, on a coiled spring of blacksmith's steel, hangs a small bell with a wire that runs down through the wall, along the passage ceiling, and out to a brass pull beside the barred road door. And since we have watched the house lock itself for the night, honesty asks a moment for the question every guest half thinks as the bolts go home. What if someone comes? Someone comes perhaps a dozen nights a year, and the house has a whole quiet liturgy for it, rehearsed by generations. The bell has voices, and the landlord reads them from the depths of sleep as the miller read his stream, the polite single ring of a benighted rider wanting bed and stall, the double pull, urgent, of a chaise on business that cannot wait, and the bad ring, the long jangling clamour that means accident on the road, and brings the whole yard out of its beds with lanterns before the wire has stopped trembling. Mostly it is the first kind, a voice through the wicket, the little shuttered spy-hole in the great door, older than politeness, a name, a destination, a look at the horse steaming in the lantern light under the arch, and then the bars come down, and the small hospitality of the small hours unfolds, muted, candlelit, practiced. The horse to a loose box, bread and cold beef and ale in the empty taproom, where the banked fire is opened a hand's breadth for company. The readiest bed warmed with the pan-hannah leaves filled against exactly this, and the traveller soaked, grateful, apologizing for the hour as they all do, assured, as they all are, in the same words the landlord's father used. Sir, an inn has no hours, only guests early and guests late, and there is a deeper old law under the custom, which the road half remembers and wholly obeys. The light and the bell are not conveniences but duties. A house that hangs a sign over the king's highway takes on the night side of the bargain, with it the lantern kept, the bell answered, the door that can always at need be made to open. The assizes have words for innkeepers who fail it. The road has worse ones. Mr. Hartwell has been wrung out of bed by lost peddlers, by a bishop's chaplain with a broken axle, by a frightened boy on a spent pony, carrying word of a fire 2 parishes off. The yard horsed him fresh in 6 minutes and asked the news, not the fare, and once 20 years ago, on the worst night of the great flood, by 2 carriers who had pulled a family from a coach in the water splash. And that night the White Hart was hospital, laundry and parish hall till dawn, and sent in no bill afterward to anyone, and is remembered for it up and down the road to this day, which is a currency landlords understand perfectly. Tonight, in this settled rain, the bell will almost certainly sleep. The ostler has ruled it, and his weather sense outranks the almanac. But almost is the word the whole arrangement lives on. The wire runs glinting along the passage ceiling like a nerve. The small bell hangs over the sleeping landlord, polished by his wife every Friday, faintly absurd, entirely sacred. And every guest in the house sleeps a little deeper, though not one of them has ever seen it for the fact that it is there. The night has a doorbell, and someone will answer it. Half the comfort of civilization, when you hold it up to the lantern, comes down to sentences of that size. Come back through the barred door the way only a story can, and stand in the dark passage a while, letting your eyes learn the house the way we once learned a village at midnight. Because an inn asleep is a music of its own, and on a rainy night it is one of the best sleeping musics in the world. The rain is the ground of everything. On the tiles high overhead, a soft, continuous rush. In the lead gutters, a hurrying gurgle. From the eaves into the yard butts, a steady musical drip, each barrel tuned a little differently, so that the house is ringed with a small, patient water orchestra that will play till morning. Under the rain, the clock, tick and tock, unhurried in the passage dark, cutting the night into slices no one is counting. Under the clock, the fires, the taproom embers settling with a papery whisper behind the guard, the kitchen stockpot muttering its single syllable once a minute, the sweet yeast smell of the rising dough moving slowly along the passage like a blessing looking for a door. And woven through it all, the sleepers, 9 travellers, the family, the household breathing in their different times, turning, settling, the merchant's snore rolling through the wall like distant friendly weather. They sleep the way travellers have always slept in inns, which is to say variously, and each after the manner of their day. The merchant who knows this bed of old and bespoke it by letter went under before the taproom emptied and will not stir till the boots knocks. The parson lay awake precisely as long as it took his wife to say the fire was smoking, which it was not, and then the road's tiredness took them both mid-sentence. The governess read her chapter by her candle end, wrote 3 lines in her journal safe, inn respectable, supper wholesome. The company kinder than expected, snuffed the light with her fingers to save it, and lay listening to the rain with the particular relief of a woman alone who has reached, without misadventure, the halfway house of a long, anxious journey, and the rain, which is no respecter of persons but is very good company, talked her down into sleep inside 10 minutes. The naval officer sleeps like the dead with the window open. 3 years of salt air have ruined him for stuffy rooms, and the rain blows in a little onto the sill, and he does not care. And somewhere in his dreaming, the rain on the gallery roof has become, of course, the sea, and the feather beds do their ancient work. This is worth a drowsy word, because the beds of the great English inns are famous across Europe. Travellers from the continent write home about them in tones of scandalized delight, and the fame is built in this house every single day. Mattresses of goose feather, shaken and turned each morning by the chambermaid's strong arms, sheets of linen coarse but clean and smelling of the yard's own drying ground and lavender from the garden border, blankets of West Country wool, and underneath it all, tonight's kindness. The warming pan's lingering ghost for the chambermaid went up the crooked stair at 9 with the long-handled brass pan full of embers and swept it, hissing gently, between every pair of sheets in the house, so that 9 travellers off a wet road climbed each into a bed already breathing warmth like a living thing. It is the small luxury that stands for the whole trade. Nobody remembers the turnpike toll. Everybody remembers the warmed bed. So the first sleep of the house, deep-earned, rain-wrapped, goes over the inn the way it went over the village and the ship and the lighthouse in our other nights. And if a guest should surface in the middle of it, in the old way of sleepers everywhere, they will find the inn's darkness a furnished and friendly one, the rain still talking, the clock still walking, the glow of the arch lantern faint through the shutter crack, and somewhere below the comfortable certainty learned in one evening, trusted like a law, that the landlord has locked the doors and the fires are banked, and somebody in this house will hear the night bell if the night rings it. An inn sells beef and ale and beds, says the road, but what it truly sells is that certainty. Sleep, traveller, the house is minding the night, and the house is, because across the streaming yard, behind the one low-lit window in all that dark, the stable lamp, the inn's night watch is awake at his post, and it is time we paid him a visit, taking the gallery stairs down into the rain-loud yard, and crossing quick between the drips to the warmest, breathingest, sweetest-smelling room the night has shown us yet. Before we cross to the stables, lie down a while where the travellers lie, say, in the small room at the stairhead, the governess's room, with the candle out and the curtains drawn back from the window, because she likes the lantern glow, and learn the inn the way a guest learns it, flat on your back in the dark, by ear alone. Nearest first, the rain on this one window, a soft irregular fingering, and behind it the deeper steady wash of rain on the gallery roof just below. The bed itself, rustling its feathers when you settle, then silent. The smell of lavender and clean linen, and somewhere faint the warm brass ghost of the pan. The candle wick sending up its last thin thread of smoke, sweetish gone. Then the room's own small voices as it cools, the joinery ticking once, twice, somewhere in the wainscot, the window easing in its frame when the wind leans, a coal settling behind the little grate's bars with a sound like a bird stirring. This is the first circle, the room, and it takes perhaps 10 minutes to learn and trust. Every traveller does it without knowing. In every strange bed, the old animal inventory, and the room passes. Then the second circle, the house. The passage clock, muffled by 2 doors, more felt than heard, a pulse in the building's wrist. The stair that creaks by itself once, at no one old houses walk a little at night, and an inn is entitled. The merchants snore, 3 rooms off, faithful as the clock and considerably louder. A door somewhere closing soft, the almost sound of the banked kitchen fire, which is not a sound at all, but a warmth in the floor, a knowledge. And the third circle, the yard and the world. Rain in the water butts, each barrel's different note. A horse shifting, the small ring of a shod hoof on stone once. The sign over the road creaking its slow iron creak, leaning into the wind and back, like the house breathing. And underneath everything so constant you must hunt for it, the faint gold presence on the window glass that is the arch lantern, saying the one word it says all night. And here is the curious, sweet thing that happens in inn beds, that the governess is feeling now as she slides under. The strangeness reverses. These are not her sounds. Her sounds are a ticking on a different stair, a different street's dogs. And yet within the half hour the inn's noises have introduced themselves, one by one, like the company at the ordinary, the clock, the snore, the sign, the rain, each in its place, and each accounted for, and the room full of strangers' sounds has become, by pure orderliness, restful, because it is never silence that lets a traveller sleep. It is legibility, a dark where every sound has a name and every name is benign. That is what 200 years of housekeeping actually builds, a night you can read. She reads it to the bottom of the page. Her breathing lengthens into the house's rhythm, joins the tide, and the small room at the stairhead goes down into the common deep of the White Hart's first sleep, carrying us with it a little way, before the story slips out again under the door and down the dark stairs and across the rain-loud yard to where one lamp burns. Slide the stable door to behind you and stand still. 26 horses in the dark make a sound like nothing else in the world. A great slow tide of breathing, layered and deep, broken by the sigh of a big body shifting in straw, the velvet rumble of a nose in the manger, the sudden musical scrape of an iron shoe, and then the tide again. The air is thick and warm as a blanket, hay and horse and oiled leather, and the sweet mash cooling in the corner bucket, and one horn lantern burns low on its hook by the door, well away from the straw, throwing a soft gold aisle down the middle of the long building, stall posts striding away into the dark on either side, like the pillars of a low wooden church. This is the inn's treasury. The house across the yard, with its silver spoons and its cash box, is worth less than what stands breathing in these stalls. Post horses and coach horses, the working capital of the road, each one fed, shod, physicked, and known like a member of the family, because that is precisely what they are. The order of the stalls is the order of the road. The 4 that came in wet tonight with the Bath stage, rubbed down and rugged and long asleep, one of them dreaming just now with little wickers and a trembling of the forelegs, galloping somewhere easy. The fresh change standing ready nearest the door, the 4 best night horses in the yard, who will go into the shafts of the mail at 2 o'clock and know it. Horses tell the time in their bones better than sextons and are sleeping accordingly, standing up in the loose-limbed hip-shot doze that horses perfected 1,000,000 years before beds. The post horses for hire, the carrier's heavy pair, and at the far dark end the old pensioner, 29 years old, first horse Mr. Hartwell ever harnessed, who does nothing now but eat and remember and be visited, and whose stall no account book in this house has ever dared to question. On a truckle bed by the corn bin, under a horse blanket, sleeps the ostler's youngest lad, 14, straw in his hair, boots on, because the night lad of a posting yard sleeps like the coachman's watch, half-wound. He is the stable's answer to the watchman, the keeper's cadet branch. His charge, until the head ostler relieves him before the mail, is the lamp, the water, and the listening. Horses at night mostly mind themselves, but a yard lad learns to surface at the sounds that matter, the cough, the cast shoe, the horse gone down in a tangle, the way the miller's ear was tuned to his stream, and to sleep sweetly through everything else. He surfaces now, half an eye, at our imaginary passing, finds the lamp burning and the tide breathing, and goes down again in one slow blink, exactly as the village children did in the loft, certain to his bones that the night is held. Stand a minute more in the lantern light, because there is one thing further to feel here, and it is the quiet engine of this whole night. These horses are the road. Every letter in the mailbags now splashing toward this inn through the dark, every son coming home, and every bride going north. Every newspaper that will tell the shires by Thursday what London knew on Tuesday, all of it moves, mile after mile after mile, on the strength of what is breathing in these stalls, and 10,000 stalls like them, strung 8 miles apart along every great road in England. The kingdom at night lies still, and its stillness is kept, its distances are held together by rooms exactly like this one, warm, hay-scented, lamp-lit, tide-breathing, where the strength for tomorrow's speed stands sleeping in the straw. The medieval village kept a granary, the coaching age keeps this. It is the same Providence in a different century, the future, stabled and dreaming, an hour's notice from a gallop. The rain thickens a moment on the roof, eases again. Away down the road, too far yet for any ear but a story's alight, is coming through the wet blackness at 9 miles an hour, swinging with the gallop of 4 horses who can see nothing and know the road entirely. In the yard, the arch lantern burns steady. In the house, 9 travellers and a household sleep on, first sleep shading into second. And in the stall nearest the stable door, the best night horse in the yard opens one eye, entirely awake in a single second, and turns his ears toward the east like a compass finding north. No clock in the house has struck, he knows. It is coming up on 2, and the mail is coming up the road. The stables are the yard's great heart, but they are not its only sleeper, and on the way back from them, lanternless and rain-quick, the story may as well do what the landlord's round does not need to, and look in on the inn's other kingdom. The offices, the working outbuildings ranged round the back court, where the house makes the things it serves. The brewhouse first, nearest the well, a tall, cool room of stone flags and coppers, smelling forever of malt and iron and wet wood, silent tonight but for the rain in its gutters and the small secret noises of its lodger, for in the corner, in the dark, the last brewing's barrels work quietly at becoming themselves. A bubble rising somewhere, a seam easing, the low fermentary sighs the brewers call the ale talking. Mrs. Hartwell brews as her mother did, October and March, and the strong October ale of this house has a name on the road. The coppers wait, scoured and upside down, for the month with an R and a frost in it. The bakehouse beside it holds the day's last warmth like a stone bottle, the great oven's iron door shut on its cooling dark, the peels hung, the trough scraped, tomorrow already begun, for the sponge is set here too on baking days, and the yeast breath under the cloths answers the ale next door, cousin to cousin, the 2 oldest magics of the house murmuring to each other across the court all night. Then the dairy, the coolest room in the kingdom, north-facing, slate-shelved, where the evening's milk stands in its broad pans growing its cream in the dark, and the churn waits, and the butter of the house, stamped with a heart, naturally firms on its marble under muslin. No fire ever comes in here, and even tonight's rain chill is only the dairy's ordinary weather. The laundry and drying ground beyond, lines empty in the wet, coppers cold till Monday. The woodyard and its ranked cords, the faggots under thatch, dry as biscuit, tomorrow's fires stacked and patient. The garden drinking, the orchard dripping, the pig prospering audibly in his sty on the ordinary's honourable leavings, the hens long up their ladder, the pigeons in the cote over the coach house folded like gloves, and the well itself in the middle of the court, lid down, rope hitched, the deep water standing at its own far down stillness under all the rain noise, the one thing in the yard the weather cannot hurry. Count it all as the rain is counting it, and you see what a guest upstairs never quite sees. The inn is a village. Brewer, baker, dairy, laundry, stable, garden, sty, the whole ancient roster folded into one yard and set beside a road. The same arc we toured by starlight in Provence 5 centuries earlier, decked now in brick and license and coach times, but provisioned on the same principle and sleeping the same sleep. Everything stowed, everything breathing, everything ready to feed the morning. The great house of the road keeps the old village night inside it like a kernel. Perhaps that is the true pedigree of the comfort travellers feel here and cannot name, not the beds, not even the beef, but the drowsy bone-deep recognition, older than roads. This is a place that makes things and keeps things and will be here in the morning. The rain eases a shade as if agreeing, and in the stable doorway across the court, the night lad's lamp burns small and gold, and the tide of the horse's breathing goes on rising and falling, and it is time we let the deep hours run. It announces itself the way it always does, first as a feeling, then as a light, then as everything at once. The head ostler is in the yard already. He relieved the lad a quarter-hour since, by the clock in his bones, standing under the arch with the fresh team harnessed and waiting. 4 dark shapes steaming gently in the lantern light, rain beading their rumps, and he cocks his head at the same eastward angle as the horse's ears. Feel it in the cobbles first, they say in the yards, the faint far drum of 16 hooves at the gallop, carried through the wet ground quicker than through the air. Then the horn, the long guard's horn of the Royal Mail, flung out into the rain a mile off. One phrase, imperious and silver, a sound only 2 years old on the English road, and already the most famous noise in the kingdom. Clear the pike, open the gate, the mail is coming through. And then, around the last bend, the light itself, 2 great lamps swinging in the blackness, growing, the shine of wet horses at full stretch, the dark bulk of the coach behind, maroon and black with the royal cipher on the door, though no colour survives a night like this, and the mail comes up the last furlong of streaming road like something between a ship and a shooting star, and turns in under the arch with a boom that fills the yard like a struck drum. And now, the change. This is the yard's high ceremony, its 4-minute cathedral service, performed at a dead run in the rain at 2 in the morning, and it is a thing worth crossing a century to see. Nobody speaks above a murmur, the house is asleep, and the yard is proud of its house, but everybody moves, the ostler and his lad at the horses' heads before the wheels have fully stopped, buckles, traces, pole chains off. The spent team, 4 horses who have just flung 9 miles of dark road behind them in under the hour, blowing hard, rain and sweat smoking off them in the lantern light, walked away, heads low, hero-tired, toward the rubbing down and the deep straw they have earned, and the fresh 4 backed into their places with the sure quick handling of men who could harness in their sleep and half-hour. The guard, the great man of the mail, in his scarlet coat and his oilskin cape, armed and sworn, the only man in England whose timepiece outranks a magistrate's, swings down with his way bill and his locked bags for this stage. Mr. Hartwell is there to meet him in the arch, roused not by any bell, but by 30 years of 2 o'clock in the blood, dressing-gowned, lamp in hand, entirely a landlord even at this hour. And the 2 of them transact the night's business in a dozen low words, while the leather mailbags for the town go down and the up-bags go aboard. The road's heavy, the water splash hub-deep but passing. All well, all well. A mug of something hot goes up to the coachman on his box, drunk in 3 swallows, with the rain running off his hat brim into it, which he has never once minded in his life. The passengers inside the mail carries 4, at a fare that buys speed and no supper, do not so much as open their eyes. They boarded at London knowing the bargain. The mail stops for nothing, not even for them. 4 minutes, perhaps 5 on a filthy night, and the guard's watch in its locked case is counting every one. Then the ostler steps back from the leaders' heads. The coachman gathers his reins with that small, settling motion that runs down the traces like a whisper. The guard swings up behind, and no horn now, out of mercy for the sleeping house. Only a low word and a click of the tongue, the mail rolls out from under the arch into the rain, wheels hissing, lamp swinging, gathers its gallop inside 50 yards, and is gone, light, then sound, then feeling, then nothing, westward into the black, carrying the letters of the kingdom toward morning. Behind it the yard stands a moment in the lantern light, breathing. Then the spent team goes into the warm. The lad takes the lamp on its round of the buckles and bolts. The head ostler allows himself the single stretch and jaw-cracking yawn that is his own private ceremony of 2 o'clock, and the rain closes over the whole event like water over a stone. Upstairs in 9 beds nobody has stirred. The merchant's snore did not miss a bar. The governess half-surfaced at the boom under the arch, heard rain and hooves in the yard of a well-run house, understood in some old part of her that this was order, not alarm, the night working, not breaking, and went down again before her thought finished forming, the way the village went deeper for the watchman's step. That is the inn's deepest art, and the true meaning of the light kept burning in the arch. The house that is awake so the house can sleep. The whole enormous business of the night road, the galloping teams, the 4-minute changes, the locked bags, the miles going by in the dark, all of it is arranged so that it passes through the middle of 200 sleeping inns like this one and wakes not one paying soul. The kingdom's letters travel through its dreams, and now the deepest hours of all begin the long ebb between the mail and the dawn, when even the yard sleeps at last, and the rain has the world to itself. We shall spend them slowly, drifting where the night drifts, down the dark road to the Tollgate and the Milestones, and the other sleeping inns strung along it like beads, back through the house one last soft round of our own, and out at the very edge of hearing, to where tomorrow is already being decided in the east. There is no hurry. Nothing on the road now until the Marlborough coach at 7. The night is paid, provisioned and at anchor, and the innkeeper, back in his warm bed with the rain on the window, is asleep before the mail is 2 milestones gone. The mail owns the road's midnight, but it does not quite own it alone, and while the yard settles again after the change, the head ostler filling his short pipe in the doorway, in his one licensed idleness of the shift could tell you, between puffs, the whole small census of the road after dark. There is the post-chaise first, the yellow bounder, the hired carriage of those who cannot wait for morning, the heir summoned to a deathbed, the lawyer with a bag that must be in Bristol by noon, now and then, in the ballads at least, a runaway pair northbound with an angry father a stage behind. A chaise may knock at any hour. That is what the night bell over the landlord's bed is for, and the yard prides itself on turning out horses, and a yawning postboy inside the quarter hour, at night rates, entered without comment in the book. Perhaps twice a month it happens. Twice a month is enough to keep the pride polished. There is the express, a single rider, posting hard with a sealed dispatch, government or bank or shipping house, who changes horses standing up, drinks standing up, and is gone. The yard judges the news of the kingdom by the faces of expresses, and the ostler has seen faces he still remembers. There is the doctor's gig, abroad at all hours on the parish's business of being born and dying, whose old mare knows every gate on the dark lanes better than he does, and has slept standing in this yard through many a long lying in. And there is the drover's world, which moves by night in the cool half the summer, the slow rivers of sheep and cattle coming down to the London markets, heard before seen, a mile of soft hooves and dog whistles in the dark, drinking the trough dry and paying in coin worn smooth, though the drove roads mostly keep to the old greenways over the downs, older than the turnpike, older than the Hart, where the night walkers of 1,000 years have always gone. And below all these on foot, the road's poorest night people, the tramping journeyman with his tools on his back, walking to the next town's work because a bed costs what he hasn't. The soldier discharged and homing, the Irish harvesters northbound in June, sleeping under ricks. The law of the great inn is silver, and its beds are not for them. But the custom of the yard is older than its law, and a wet night has never yet sent a civil man away from the hayloft ladder, nor the kitchen door been shut on a crust for a soldier with his papers. Mr. Hartwell enters none of this in the ledger. His father kept the same unwritten page. The White Hart's account with the road does not all render in coin. The pipe goes out. The ostler knocks it dead on his heel weatherwise, and the yard closes its census for the night mail gone through. Shays unlikely in this wet, drovers not till the moon changes and gives the last hours over, at last to the rain. Go out through the arch past the lantern, which does not mind us, and stand a moment on the empty turnpike under the rain. The road at 2:30 is a long, pale ribbon of wet, glimmering faintly with the light it borrows from the sky, running east and west between its dark hedges toward its two invisible seas of houses. The mail's wheel tracks are already dissolving in the puddles. Nothing else will move here for hours. The road at night belongs to the rain and to the small sovereign nations of the verge, a hedgehog making his rounds under the dripping hawthorn, an owl working the field edge on soft wings between showers, the Milestones standing at its post with its worn numerals, London 52, keeping the only watch that needs no lantern. The turnpike age has hammered this road hard and true, but it has not changed its oldest nature. A road at night is a promise lying quiet, that the world is connected, that you could, if you had to, walk from this spot to anywhere in the kingdom, folded up and resting like the inn's own coiled ropes of onions, waiting for day. 1/2 mile east at the edge of the parish, a single low light burns in the rain, the Tollgate. The pikeman's cottage crouches beside its white gate, and the pikeman himself, a one-legged pensioner of the American War, with his ticket board and his cash box and his kettle, dozes in his chair by the embers, lame leg up, lanyard of his little window bell looped round his wrist, in the practiced half-sleep of all the road's night servants. He heard the mail come through at the gallop 1/2 an hour since. The mail pays no toll and stops for no gate, and the pikeman had his gate swung wide 2 full minutes before the horn, because a pikeman who makes the Royal Mail check his pace even once will hear about it from the Trust, the Guard and History, and now, till the 7 o'clock coaches, there will be nothing but rain on the toll board, and perhaps near 5, the first farm cart to market, and the drover with his sheep, who always argues the count and always pays. He fills his pipe, in no hurry to light it. 49 toll gates between London and Bristol keep this same small vigil tonight. 49 embers, 49 kettles. The road sleeps, but it sleeps like the inn with its doors locked and someone's eye half open. And strung westward down the dark, 8 and 10 miles apart, all the way into the rainy distance, the others. The next change is the castle at Marlborough, where the same lantern burns under the same sort of arch, and an ostler, who is the second cousin of ours, has just stabled the mail's Marlborough stage and gone yawning back to bed. Beyond it, the George, beyond that the Pelican, the Bear, the White Lion, the Old Angel, the great inns of the Bath Road, standing in their sleeping towns like a line of banked fires, each one holding its little pool of lantern light against the wet dark, each one keeping the same trust. Beds above, horses below, one light burning, somebody near the bell. The travellers asleep in our 9 beds are asleep in 100 beds down that road tonight, the same rain on all their windows, and tomorrow they will pass each other at the changes, at the ordinaries, at the pike, moving 8 miles at a time along the great warm chain. The medieval village, we said one night, rode the dark like a boat in a fleet of 10,000. The coaching road is the same fleet, mustered into a line and moving. England asleep is not a scattering of lonely houses, but a strung necklace of kept lights, and the rain runs along the whole thread of it tonight, from London Stone to Bristol Quay, tapping on every arch lantern and finding every one of them lit. Come back in, up the streaming road, under our own arch, the lantern greets us like the house's one open eye, and let the last hours have the house to themselves. The rain is settling to its gentlest, that fine after-midnight sift that is less a sound than a texture on the dark. The stall lamp glows, the tide of horse breath rises and falls. The stockpot has said its word for the 10,000th time. In the small room at the stairhead the governess dreams, precisely and pleasantly, of a schoolroom with a fire in it and children who mind. In the room over the arch the parson's wife has claimed the whole coverlet by slow strategy, as she has every night for 30 years, and the parson, unconscious and unbeaten, has countered with the counterpane, as he has every night for 30 years. The naval officer, sea boots by the door, sails his open window's weather toward his mother's house, and the old dog on the landing, who has heard every sound tonight and judged every one of them lawful, puts his nose back under his tail. The inn rides at anchor in the last of the dark. Morning is being loaded somewhere east of the rain, like tomorrow's coach in a far yard, and the first person in this house will meet it in the kitchen, an hour before the light. An inn asleep dreams in more directions than any house in England, and in the last soft hours it is a pleasant thing to drift along the gallery one final time and eavesdrop as only a story may on where they have all gone. The merchant is in his warehouse on the Bristol Quay, among wool bales that smell in the dream unaccountably of damson tart, doing sums that come out right a rich man's sleep. But he began as a roof passenger 30 years ago, and on rainy nights the dream sometimes puts him back up top, young and wet and hopeful, and he wakes at dawn oddly happy for it. The officer is at sea, of course. The rain gave him the sea at lights out and has kept its promise all night. But the ship is anchored now in some blue impossible bay, and his mother is aboard somehow pouring tea on the quarterdeck, and no one in the dream finds this strange, which is how he knows, even sleeping, that he is nearly home. The parson dreams his sermon preached and well received, even daringly laughed at in the right place, and his wife, under the whole coverlet at last, dreams of nothing at all, which is her reward and her art. The governess walks her dream schoolroom with its impossible fire and its minding children, and being a precise dreamer has already given the room this inn's own window, rain and lantern glow below. Some part of her has decided to keep tonight and will build all winter's better dreams inside it. Above them the boots dreams of boots, rows of them, gleaming, saluting for the young dream their work until their work is done dreaming them. Hannah dreams by candle and economy, brief and warm. And Mrs. Hartwell, who dreamed of bread for 40 years, dreams now mostly of the accounts coming out even, and her daughter at Devizes safely delivered of the child that is due at Mackilmas, the dreams of a woman whose bread long ago learned to bake itself. And the landlord? The landlord dreams the house. Ask any old innkeeper, and you will get the same half-smiling answer. They dream the rounds, the passage, the stair, the yard door, the arch walking it all again a hand's breadth above the floor, trying bolts that are always fast, trimming a lantern that always burns, greeting shadow coaches that boom in under the arch full of passengers with unremembered faces. All well, all well. 30 years of nights have worn the round into him the way feet wear stone. The house has learned to keep itself even in his sleep. Down in the stables the horses dream their running dreams, forelegs trembling. The old pensioner at the dark end dreams who knows of the young landlord's first clumsy harness, forgiven these 29 years. The cat before the taproom embers dreams royally of nothing that concerns us. and the old dog on the landing has dreamed his magnificent errand so many times tonight that he has finally caught whatever he was chasing and lies still at last, deeply content, upside down. Rain on the roofs, over all of it thinner now, patient, finishing its long night's work. The whole lit chain of the road dreams westward in by in under the same weather. And the east, behind the clouds, has begun not light yet, the first thought of grey. The kitchen girl's alarum gathering itself in the dark of her attic like the red start on a village ridgepole long ago. The night has perhaps an hour left to hold. It holds it beautifully. One more slow turn about the sleeping house while the rain sifts fine. Because the Georgian night, for all its turnpikes and timetables, still keeps the old night folded inside it, and an inn at 3 in the morning is a good place to feel the fold. The light first. This whole vast house that blazed with 100 flames at supper rides the deep hours on perhaps 5, the arch lantern, the stable lamp, the Tollgate ember away east, the banked seeds in kitchen and taproom. Everything else is darkness of the old, entire pre-everything kind, and the house is built for it, as its guests are. Every chamber candle went up the stairs at bedtime and was snuffed at the pillow. Every candlestick waits by every bed with its tinderbox beside it, and no traveller in England undresses without marking, by touch, where flint and steel lie for relighting a candle at 3 in the morning is a 5-minute craft of sparks and scorched thumbs, and most sleepers waking in the dark simply do not trouble. They read the room by ear as we have learned to, find the lantern glow on the glass, and go down again. Candles are counted, saved, inherited, almost. Hannah's candle-end perquisite is real wages, and the age's whole tender vocabulary of light lives in them. To burn the candle at both ends, a candle held to the devil, not worth the candle, game to the last snuff. The road's other lights are as few and as known, coach lamps, the mail's twin stars, the lantern a farm sets in a window when someone is sick and the doctor may pass. A single light in the dark in this England is never decoration. It is always a sentence, and everyone can read it. And the old beliefs ride the dark too, easy in the saddle, in this year of turnpikes and dictionaries. The taproom, which doubts the mail coach professionally, does not doubt that horses see more than men, well as leaders proved it at the culvert. The kitchen keeps its lucky horseshoe over the door, points up, to hold the luck in. The ostler will not stable a grey next the door in May, and could not tell you why, only that his father wouldn't either. Hannah turns her apron when the new moon catches her through glass, and Mrs. Hartwell, who fears God and audits sermons, still sets the Christmas loaf aside against thunder, as her mother did. Nobody defends any of it, nobody drops any of it. It is not credulity, but keeping the same instinct that winds the clock 7 turns and no more, the old night handed down in small parcels alongside the recipes. The century of reason is loose in the land, printing its almanacs, and the almanacs sell famously and are read by candlelight for the weather signs and the moon's phases and the lucky days, so that even reason on the road travels the old way, one flame, one page, one believing face in the dark. Later ages will call this the age of coaching and mean the speed. But stand here at its 3 in the morning, in the passage of a sleeping inn, and what you feel is not the speed at all. It is how close the old dark still stands. One candle thickness away, patient and familiar, no enemy to anyone in the house, and how gracefully the age lives beside it, neither fearing the dark nor wasting it, but furnishing it, as it furnishes everything, with law, with thrift, with kept lights, and with sleep. The clock walks, the rain sifts, the fold holds, and the last hour of the true night begins to pass the house over, hand to gentle hand, toward the kitchen girl's alarum and the grey. But before the kitchen candle is lit, while the house lies in its last and lightest sleep, and nothing anywhere needs us let the mind drift, as it drifted once around a village year, along the ring of the inn's 4 seasons. Because tonight's rain is only one of the road's weathers, and every servant of this house could tell you drowsily how each season sleeps under these roofs. Winter is the fireside season, and the road's great test. Hard frost makes the turnpike ring like iron, and the coaches run sweet and fast on it. But snow is the road's one master, and every few winters comes a night when the drifts close over the wold like a white sea, and the coaches simply stop, and then the inns come into their oldest glory, as Ox, the Bath stage and the Gloucester machine and 2 chaises and a wedding party, all snowed in together for 3 days. Every bed doubled, mattresses in the parlour, the ordinary stretched with Mrs. Hartwell's deep larder. This is what the hams in the beams are for, the taproom fire roaring from morning to midnight, and strangers who will exchange Christmas letters for the next 20 years, playing cards and roasting chestnuts while the drifts climb the yard gates. Landlords grumble at snow and count its takings quietly. Travellers dine out on it for years. It is the road's way of reminding the age of the mail coach that the old world is still out there, and that the inn, provisioned like a fortress, warm as a barn full of cattle, is still the strongest thing on it. Spring is mud and lambs and the road slow waking, the water splashes running deep with the melt, the coaches late and spattered to the windows, the yard a masterpiece of managed mire, and the first post-chaises of the season coming through with the London families bound for Bath and the waters. Spring is when the inn garden turns over and the smell of cut earth crosses the yard to meet the smell of the stables, when the swallows come back to the nests under the gallery eaves, the same nests the ostler swears, the same swallows, and the whole yard looks up from its buckles once a day to watch them cut and glitter over the pump. Summer is the road's high tide, light till 10, the up and down coaches thundering through thick as market carts, dust instead of mud, the yard drinking water by the troughful, extra horses at grass in the paddock, haymaking in the inn's own meadow, the smell of it drifting in at every window, the taproom spilling onto the benches by the door of an evening, and the long golden evenings when the last coach comes in at dusk with the sun still on the weather vane, and supper is eaten with the parlour windows open to the garden and the moths coming in to look at the candles. And autumn is the reckoning and the plenty together, the harvest home, the cellar filling, the brewhouse at work, and the sweet wort steam rolling across the yard, the orchard down, the apples racked in the loft, the bowl on the kitchen dresser, bottomless for a season, and even the landlord's nightly apple lawful twice. The roads busy with the term-time traffic, scholars going up, lawyers going round, the year's last fine travel before the weather turns. Autumn evenings are the taproom's best, the fire relearned after the summer's neglect, the first frost outside, the carrier with news of the fair, and the great annual argument about whether the coming winter will be a hard one, conducted by the same voices with the same evidence to the same conclusion. The berries are heavy, the onions grew thick coats. It will be hard, as it was conducted in this room, when the oldest man present was the boy by the door. The inn wears its seasons the way the road wears its weathers, lightly and forever. The sign creaks through all of them, the arch lantern burns through all of them, and the year turns around this house the way the house turns around its yard, slowly, on good hinges kept. All of that is folded, sleeping inside tonight's rain. And now, in the kitchen, a candle is moving. The house is about to begin again, as we watched a village hearth begin, as we watched a dawn watch change at sea, with a fire waking under a familiar hand, an hour before the sun. And at the hinge of every one of those years, as at the hinge of the village year long ago, sits the one night when the inn turns itself inside out, Christmas on the great road. For 2 days before it, The coaches come through garlanded holly in the harness, the guards' horns berry trimmed, every up-coach from the west loaded past Law and Reason with geese and hampers and rosy children going to grandmothers, every down coach full of schoolboys loosed like starlings, and the White Hart stands at the middle of the flood with every fire lit and every oven going, Mrs. Hartwell's kitchen a sweet roaring chapel of goose fat and cinnamon, the yard a carol of horns and greetings. Then Christmas Eve dusk falls, the last coach goes through toward its own hearths, and the road for one night in the year empties utterly and on purpose. Even the mail runs thin, even expresses wait, and the great chain of inns stands down together, light by light, into the only silence the coaching age ever schedules. The Hart bars no door that night, by the family's old custom, but it sells nothing after 9. What moves in the house moves as gift. The household's own supper at the long kitchen table, master and mistress and maids and ostlers and the boots, all one company for once. Goose and plum pudding and the strong October ale, the head ostler's annual song, delivered standing, in a bass that rattles the coppers, about a fox. And afterward the whole company out through the snow-hushed or rain-soft yard to the stables, carrying apples, because on Christmas Eve, says the yard's oldest law, the horses must have their share and their thanks, spoken aloud, stall by stall, for the year's miles. And no one from the landlord down has ever felt foolish doing it, and the old pensioner at the dark end gets 2 apples and hears every year the same 6 words from Mr. Hartwell, said low, when the lantern has moved on. 30 years, old man, 30 years. Midnight service in the town church. The household walking down together under one lantern, like a little procession of glowworms, the way another village walked 500 Christmases before them, and home through the cold, to bank the fires and sleep the one night the innkeeper's round is walked in company. His wife's arm in his, the 2 of them trying the bolts together and laughing at the stubborn one, as they have every Christmas since the year they married across that yard. And Christmas morning the road wakes late and generous, the first coach through at 10, with its guard playing carols on the key bugle instead of the horn, feed with hot punch at every change the length of England, the poor of the parish at the kitchen door by ancient appointment, going away heavy, the taproom free to the old men of the town from noon, the landlord drawing their ale himself. It is the inn's one day of running at a sweet dead loss, entered in no ledger, balanced in another book entirely, and by St. Stephen's Day the horns are singing plainly again. The mail is on its iron schedule, the great chain is hauling England's business westward as before. But the yard remembers, all year, the sound of carols under the arch, and so, we may as well admit at this drowsy distance, does the road. It is the kitchen girl who lights the first candle up at 4:30 by the alarum of habit, down the back stair in the chill with her shawl over her shift, but it is Mrs. Hartwell, 10 minutes behind her, who wakes the fire. In this house, as in a village we knew, the mistress's hand on the morning embers is office, rite and ritual altogether. The ash blanket comes back. The seeds of fire are found alive. The breath, the twigs, the standing flame, the whole old liturgy, performed here on a hearth broad enough to roast an ox-side, and inside 10 minutes, the great fire is climbing its chimney with a morning voice. The stockpot is moved to its working place, the kettle is on its idle back, and the kitchen cold cave a quarter hour ago is again the glowing heart-room of the working world. Then the house wakes downward from the top and upward from the bottom, the way inns do, and meets itself in the middle. The maid's feet on the attic stairs, shutters folding back all along the ground floor, each with its own clatter, letting in the grey rain-washed beginnings of the light. The boots up with the maids, brush in hand down to his den off the passage, where 9 pairs of boots wait in their muddy row, to be scraped, blacked, buffed and returned, each pair set soft as a secret outside its right door, the little nightly resurrection complete before a single sleeper knows it happened. The fires relearned in parlour and taproom, the great front door unbarred and unbolted, the bottom bolt arguing as always, and swung wide to the road, so that the inn's mouth is open again, the yard gates set back, the pump handled till the water runs sweet, and across the yard the stables already an hour into their own morning, the ostlers feeding and watering by lantern light gone grey, the spent male team of 2 o'clock pulling hay as if the gallop had happened to 4 other horses, and the Marlborough change being groomed bright for 7. The smells assemble the morning the way the bell assembled the village. First smoke, then bread, the night's risen dough gone into the oven at 5, and by 6 the whole passage is one warm loaf, then bacon, then coffee, that dark new fashion the road has taken to, and up the crooked stairs, on trays and in cans, goes the traveller's reveille. Hot water, knocked in with a cheerful word at 6. Chocolate for the governess as the landlord quietly ordered at supper. Boots discovered transfigured at every door. The merchant descends first, drawn by Bacon down a scent line as old as himself. The officer takes the stairs 2 at a time with his sea chest already corded home today. The parson and his lady come down composed. The coverlet war adjourned sine die, and the ordinary works its morning shift. Eggs, ham, bread hot from the oven, the teapot and the coffee pot going up and down the cloth, while the rain, thinning now, gives over the argument at last, and a watery sun puts one finger through the parlour window and touches the marmalade like a promise. Bills are called for and settled at the bar. The governess is looked at in the night, has quietly mislaid its supper. The way bill for the 7 o'clock is checked against the guests, and the yard, fed and harnessed and swept, stands ready for the day's first thunder of its own. At 7, punctual to the guard's watch, it comes. The Marlborough coach swings in under the arch, changes in 6 easy minutes. Daylight is slower than the mail, and maybe takes up the governess and her small trunk and the 2 roof passengers, dried and fortified. The horn sings once over the wet fields, and the inn hands its guests forward down the great chain, westward, as it has handed travellers forward every morning for 200 years. Mr. Hartwell stands under the sign to see them go. Landlords always watch the first coach out. It is how the day is proved, and the gig comes round for the naval officer, and the merchant lights his morning pipe on the bench by the door with the air of a man who intends to be exactly where he is for another hour. The sign creaks. The swallows rained off yesterday cut and glitter over the pump. The White Hart, having crossed one more night entire and delivered every soul in it safe to morning, opens for the day's first stranger, and somewhere upstairs a chambermaid is already turning the first feather bed, and the whole wheel begins again. Stand once more under the sign in the washed morning air before we go, and cast up as the landlord would the night's true accounts, because an inn's ledger, like a village morning, only records the smallest part of what the dark hours earned. 9 travellers delivered to their onward roads, rested, fed, dry-booted, and the road's own word for it well used. That is the visible entry. The invisible ones run deeper. The letters that went through at 2 o'clock are 40 miles nearer their readers. Somewhere down the line this morning, a merchant's credit stands because his bill arrived. A mother has her son's handwriting at last, and the news of the kingdom is exchanging itself at 10 miles an hour on the strength of 4 fresh horses this yard put into the traces in the rain. The governess crossed one more of the anxious stages between her old life and her new one, inside a house that treated her, for 14 shillings quietly reduced, like a daughter. The naval officer will be at his mother's door before her letter saying, "Expect him is." The gig is at the arch even now, and the last we shall see of him is a sea chest and a boy's grin going up a wet lane at a very unnautical gallop. And the road itself, the great warm chain, London to Bristol, inn by inn, light by light, has passed one more night proved. Every arch lantern kept, every gate swung for the mail, every bell answered, so that all the sleeping travellers strung along 100 miles of rainy England woke this morning where they trusted they would, which is the whole miracle, so nightly and so total that no one has ever once thought to call it one. That is what the inn sells. In the end we said it at the door, and the night has signed it. Continuity. The certainty, purchasable for silver, but made of 200 years, that the dark between here and home is furnished, watched and warmed, that 8 miles on there is another light, and 8 beyond that another, all the way, that a stranger's house will mind your sleep like your own mother's, one night at a time, forever. The coaching age will pass, every age passes, the village bell passed, the ship's watch is passing, but this thing the White Hart keeps does not pass, it only changes keepers. Somewhere tonight, in whatever year you are reading this from, a light is being kept over some door against the small chance of a traveller, and someone is walking a last round, and someone is asleep in a strange bed, perfectly safe because of it. The road goes on, the lights hold the line, and the house fed, swept, aired, its sign creaking in the drying wind, its first stranger of the day already turning in under the arch, stands ready to do the whole thing again tonight, and would not have it otherwise. Our watch is over. The day shift of the world has the road. The last part of this story is not a chapter at all. It is only the winding down the same rainy night, passing one more time, slower and softer, for no one now but you. So let the bright day spend itself the way remembered days do. The coach is through at noon and 4, the yard's small thunders, the taproom filling and talking and emptying, the sign turning its beast to the sun and back. And let the light go long over the wet fields, and the lamps be lit in the windows one by one, and the rain, for it is that kind of week, and no one minds come back with the dusk soft as before, to take up its night's work on the roofs. And here, once more, is the hour where we came in. The last coach swaying up the road behind its lamps, the arch, a warm mouth of lamplight in the wet dark, supper going up, the house doing the only thing it knows, which is everything. There is nothing left for you to do tonight. You have seen how completely it is all seen to. The travellers are fed and stabled, if travellers may be stabled. The horses are stabled certainly, and warm, and the tide of their breathing has begun to rise and fall in the dark. Hannah has gone up the gallery with the candle and the hissing pan, and 9 beds are breathing warmth under 9 turned-down coverlets. The taproom is at its last hour, the fire settling, the old song being sung low and exactly right at the dark end of the room, the dog asleep under the settle, the rain streaming its slow silver down the black windows. The smith has judged the weather and gone into it. The coachman has pronounced the early start and climbed to his room above his horses. The cat has the hearth, and the landlord takes down the candle lamp and lights it at the embers and begins the round. And you can let his footsteps take over from here as you once let a watchman's. That is what they are for. The road door, the bar and the 2 bolts, the stubborn one grumbling its 100-year grumble, the parlour shutters, the clock wound its 7 turns and no more, the cellar and its cool cave quiet where a man can hear himself think and chooses instead to think nothing at all, the kitchen, the banked fire looked at because looking is what innkeepers are for, the stock pot muttering, the dough rising under its cloths in the dark, the only member of the household still at work, the apple from the bowl, because some laws are above a landlord, then the stairs, slow, hand cupped at the flame, the 4th step stepped over, the row of boots outside the doors, waiting to be made new by morning, the merchant's snore rolling its friendly weather through the wall, the pause at the stairhead window, rain silvering past the horn panes, the yard below, all shining cobbles and kept light, and the long look that finds it all exactly as it should be, tonight as every night as tonight. The mail will come at 2 and change in the rain in 4 minutes and wake no one. You may sleep through it as the house does, or if you should surface at the boom under the arch, you know now what it is, the night working, not breaking, order passing through at a gallop, carrying the kingdom's letters through its dreams, and you may do as the governess does, and be stitched a little deeper down by the very sound of it. The arch lantern burns, all night, every night, rain or frost or fog. The light the lost steer by, the light the mail looks for, the one economy never made. The Tollgate ember glows half a mile east, and the kettle beside it. The lights of the road hold their line, 8 miles and 8 miles and 8 miles, all the way into the west. The rain grows fine and finer on the tiles, in the gutters, on the gallery roof, less a sound now than a texture on the dark. The clock walks, the stockpot mutters, the horses breathe their long, slow tide, and the inn sleeps, and the road sleeps, and the strung lights of England hold them all the way they are holding you now. And if you are still drifting, stay for one more lap of the lamp, slower yet, for the night is long, and the house does not tire of being walked. The road door, tried once more by a hand that trusts it. The clock, glimpsed in passing, its pale face keeping its own counsel. The taproom embers, one shade darker, the cat rearranged upon the warm flags like a small spilled shadow. The kitchen, breathing bread and banked fire. The stockpot saying its word, the apple bowl, one apple lighter, keeping the law. The stairs, the sleeping doors, the boots at attention in the dark, the merchant's weather rolling gently, the stairhead window and the silvered yard, the stable's long tide, in and out, 26 sleepers strong, the lamp on its hook, gold and small, the old pensioner at the dark end, dreaming his forgiven harness, the arch lantern, the road, the rain, the lights of England, 8 miles and 8 miles, holding their line the whole wet way to morning. Sleep well, the house is minding the night. Sleep well. The house is minding the night. The doors are barred. The lantern burns. The mail has gone through. Nobody stirred. The lights of England hold their line. Rain on the roofs, and the long tide of the horses breathing.